All right, week 9 of the college football season is here, and we've got a great slate of games actually on this Friday night, but a loaded slate of top 25 teams battling one another this weekend. And we're going to talk about a couple of those games, kind of put up a shut-up time here in this week 9, and we'll do it with the Friday crew. Doesn't get any better than this as we welcome back in Bryan Leonard, who obviously lost a bet, which is why he is back here with us. Adam Trigger, once again in the house. And, of course, TC, Teddy Covers, ready to roll. All right, Bryan, let me start with you because no better way than the Big Ten to kick off what is going to be a very interesting week here. And Penn State coming off a bye, a huge second half against USC. Then they got to relax a little. Now they got to go to Camp Randall. They're laying almost a touchdown, taking on a rejuvenated Wisconsin team who loses their quarterback, and then all of a sudden, somehow or another, they're dropping 40 points a game. I believe Ohio State on deck for Penn State. Do you like laying points at Camp Randall here?
Rutgers and Northwestern by a combined margin of 117-16. Those are three teams with lousy offenses, and they'll be facing a very good offense this week in Penn State. But until this Wisconsin team plays well against the big boys, I can't get on them here. They were very weak early in the season when they did play tougher competition. So I like Penn State here. As long as this line is 7 or less, I think we've got a nice play here on Penn State. You know they're going to give it full effort. The only question is next week with Ohio State. So maybe it's for those that worry about that, maybe a first half bet on Penn State. But I'd rather play them out. They're the better team. Play them out for the full game, minus the 6.5 or 7.
All right, get it done there. Big Ten battle. Like you said, what do you believe? Boy, don't be looking ahead, Penn State. Don't be peeking. Anything is possible there. All right, Trig. Let's talk here. We mentioned earlier that we've got a very interesting game, a slate of games here tonight, and one of them includes the ACC battle between Louisville and Boston College, two teams that you certainly have been following the ACC all year long. And what are you thinking here with Louisville, who I think is still licking the wounds from the ass whooping that you gave them not too long ago, but a game in which you called, as a matter of fact, on this show. But what do you think here? BC at home, are you buying them getting, what, a touchdown, 7.5 right now?
Well, I don't think they necessarily got crushed by Miami. Miami did cover that number, but that was a pretty entertaining game, 52-45 final there. I thought Louisville moved the ball. They were right in it. I think Louisville blows BC out tonight. I'm pretty close to betting this game. Like, I wish I bet this earlier in the week. So now I'm kind of in like wait and see mode to see if Boston College takes some money over the next couple hours and I can get a 7 minus 120, 7 minus 125, something like that. I'd probably leave it alone at 7.5 because it's still a key number. But as far as my handicap is concerned, I do think Boston College is similar to Georgia Tech in the respect that they opened their season with this big signature win over Florida State. And Joe, we now know what Florida State is. So that was a top 10 team at the time. Furthest thing you could probably find from a top 10 team now. And the Boston College team, Joe, that we saw the past couple weeks, I think is more what I expected them to be this season. A team that's, going to win some games, going to probably struggle to get to 6-6. That was the ceiling I had for BC coming into the year, was 6-6 in a bowl game. And the last three, their last 3 times out, it's been exactly what they've been. They barely beat Western Kentucky. Yes, they had their backup quarterback for that game. They were really outclassed by Virginia a couple weeks ago. And then last week on Thursday night, really destroyed by Virginia Tech. I know they had their kind of, third quarter where they came out and scored 21 points, but that was a 28-0 game at halftime, and it turned into a blowout, sort of as expected. Thomas Castellanos is not a great passer, yet teams have been able to make him into a passer. He does make plays with his legs, at least last year he did. In that opener against Florida State, 14 carries for 73 yards, but he really hasn't done that since. Last week against Virginia Tech was the first time he broke 20 rushing yards since the opening week of the season, but it took him 20 carries to do it. So 20 carries for 58 yards, Joe, just 2.9 yards per carry. That's not exactly effective. And if you could turn Castellanos into a passer, he's not that good. He'll turn the ball over. BC will turn the ball over. 8 turnovers in those 3 games I just mentioned, their last 3 games, 3 against Virginia, and then 3 last week against Virginia Tech. Louisville's not elite defensively, but they are good enough. And I think if they can, kind of keep the BC offense from going up and down the field, this one probably gets ugly. Louisville has a solid offense. They're top 15 team in EPA this year. Show has been good. He's been consistently good. I could see this being a blowout. I'm pretty close to a ad here of Louisville -7 if I can get that at some point in the next couple hours.
All right, kicking it around, looking for a big win by Louisville here tonight, taking on Boston College. 2 games in the books here, guys. We got 3 more games we're going to talk about. Plus, if you're joining us here live today, go ahead, drop your comments in the chat room. We'll get to as many games that you want to talk about as we can. And, of course, on the replay, go ahead, drop them in the comment section, as we're going to be keeping an eye on the comment section right up until kickoff on Saturday. And go ahead, give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. As long as you're there, you might as well join the WagerTalk TV family, because Teddy is about to drop some knowledge. I don't know, Teddy, it always feels like we're talking about Dion with you. His team in Colorado here, Prime, getting ready to take on Cincinnati. It feels like another one of these games in which, get the popcorn, we're probably getting a ton of points, unless you think one of these defenses can actually slow down the offenses here. How are you looking at this one?
So last week I came on the show and made a case for Colorado as a short underdog at Arizona. And obviously it was a game where the Buffs were in control. It was probably the best I've seen Colorado play. That being said, we're in a very different role for Colorado this week. They have to lay points. They're not catching points. But this is a Buffs team that has been, as consistent as it gets. The public's been on Colorado. The wise guys have been fading Colorado week in, week out. What happened this week? Money for Colorado from the wise guys. And that, to me, is worth noting, because we really haven't seen that at all over the last 2 years. And, of course, we're talking about a Colorado team that is now 5-0 against the spread their last 5 ball games. Only loss coming by a field goal to a Kansas State team that may well be the best team in the conference. And defensively, we've seen legit improvement from Colorado. They have the best player in college football on the defensive side, obviously, in Travis Hunter. But 7 points to Arizona last week, 21 to UCF. We saw them control Baylor's offense. It's been a defense that's getting better week by week. This is a long trip for Cincinnati, all right? Since he's been to Texas, they've been to Florida, and now they're traveling out to Colorado all within the course of the last month. They've played better than anyone expected them to play this year, all right? The Bearcats have certainly been a pleasant surprise under Scott Satterfield, but from a strength of schedule standpoint, I do have my questions. Don't love this spot for the dog right before the bye week. They got a bye coming up on Dex. And Colorado is not a team I'm in any rush to stand in front of. as funny as that sounds, betting against Colorado a lot down the stretch last year. You look at the schedule this year: Cincy, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Okie State. There's not a team they can't beat down the stretch. And of course, we talked about that defense, 107 yards per game better than last year. I think there's still value on Colorado, even after this strong point spread run. It's Buffs or pass for this better.
Ooh, all right. Buffs are pass. He said the same thing last week, looking at them as at a short price dog. He's following it up this week. If it ain't broke, people, we don't fix it. You know how that works. Shout out to those of you joining us live, by the way. FB Coach is in the house, and I made the mistake of asking if anybody had any questions about games. He is still listing games, in fact. I think he is still typing, and we're already through half the board here. So we'll get to those, FB Coach. I promise you, man. And a big shout out to D-Best in the house on TikTok joining us here. He likes the idea that maybe the wise guys are on Colorado in this one. It's a great slate of game, a lot of top 25 teams. So going head to head here in week 9, it's mostly because one of those is Navy, but that's a whole different argument. But got a question, drop them in the chat while we'll go roundtable with 2 of the bigger games coming up this weekend. And what do you do with the number 1 team coming off I don't want to say embarrassing loss, but when you don't even gain 40 yards in the first half against Georgia, I guess maybe that is a little bit embarrassing. And Bryan Leonard, let me ask you, number 1 team in the country gets bulldozed by Georgia, now has to take on a team that, well, they don't like to lose, much less not cover in these spots as a dog. I believe 4-0. As a dog, 3 outright wins. Is this a team we want to be laying 18.5 against here?
Yeah, coming into the season, you would think this would be a definite letdown spot here for Texas, but the way they got it handed to them last week, we'll have to see the character of this team here. As I'd mentioned before, a team that looks great one week and looks to be the team to beat can always take that loss, and then all of a sudden they're gone for a while. So this is a telling game for me. I'm not involved in this game because I think this is a game we learn from. But, yeah, you mentioned the Longhorns flying high until last week, stepping up in class, and we'll see how they bounce back here. They've had the kind of season that Austin will see. I think that tells us a little bit here. They could bounce back here against a team that, obviously they should be favored by. But I think if you're looking to bet Texas, you get a little bit of a discount, I think, because I believe I made this line 21. So they started the year with 6 straight victories. In retrospect, they had yet to play a quality football team. That's something we didn't discuss last week. 31-12 win at Michigan at the time looked very impressive. Not so much now. Wins over Mississippi State and Oklahoma don't mean the same as it would have in other seasons, as both those programs are down. You mentioned Vandy. I'm become a big Vandy fan this year. I like what they're doing. I'm always rooting for underdogs who start to put it together. This Vandy team has been so bad over the years that it's a program that you got to be pretty smart to go to Vandy. They don't take everybody there, which really limits them in the same regard as Notre Dame and some of the other teams because of that. But Vandy's 5-2 on the year, with every FBS win being close. Last week's poor performance in a 24-14 win over Ball State is their biggest margin of victory, and I have Ball State as one of the worst teams in college football. So I wasn't impressed by that at all, that 10-point victory. Both teams attack well through the air, but only Texas has really proven itself defensively. Like I said, my number's Texas 21, but I'm just going to wait and see how they play this game. I think there's value on Texas, but you never know when a team gets their heart broken like that. I mean, it's not really heartbreaking, I guess, because you still got a long season and with the 12-team playoff and all. But they had to be coming into that game flying high. I think they were the greatest thing on earth. And then now they're like, what the hell's going on? So that's going to keep me off of this one. But it wouldn't surprise me if Texas wins this by margin.
Like in Texas, diving into some of these numbers here, Trig, it's hilarious. Let's just go to Diego Pavia, who, by the way, is not new to being an underdog, especially one of the multiple touchdown realm here. His last 6 games as an underdog of 2 touchdowns or more, He's gone 6-0 against the number and 5-1 straight up. They seem to have handled the better defenses so far. The better defenses doesn't seem to really affect what Vanderbilt does offensively. They're averaging about the same yards per play regardless. Ask Alabama how good that offense is. But is Texas the one defense that makes them go the other way here? Are you scared of laying the 18.5?
No, I think I would lay the 18.5 if I was going to play this game. A couple things. So, Vanderbilt, they've got their upset wins, but something I want to point out about the Alabama game, like they also followed Georgia, but of course Alabama won. So they had like a little bit of a hangover in that respect. Texas did not win last week, as you know, Joe. They kind of got embarrassed, and I don't think that you're going to see a scenario where Texas is caught off guard here, especially with the fact that now Vandy, they have a win over Virginia Tech, their win over Alabama, and they beat Kentucky. So that's one reason that I don't think Texas is going to overlook Vanderbilt here. The other being their win over Alabama, right? Like we've seen Vanderbilt come out and pull the big upset. Had Texas blown out Georgia last week, Joe, I think I'd be more likely to say, okay, maybe Vandy could hang around and surprise again. But the way that Vandy was able to sort of win that game against Alabama, they caught them sleeping early, and then they were able to just sort of control the ball, like control the clock, eat up some clock, have long possessions. But some of that you can't do unless you get ahead early. So they had sort of like the good fortune of being ahead in that game, which allowed them to have longer possessions, keep Alabama off the field. I don't know that they catch Texas off guard. So I don't know that they're playing from ahead, and then it all kind of goes out the window. And I think if you've got Vandy playing from behind here, they could really be playing from behind, at which point it probably gets ugly. And I lean toward Texas probably winning this game by 3 or 4 scores.
All right, expecting a big bounce back in this spot. Teddy, how do you approach these situations, right? You get a team that was a favorite, top number 1 team in the country. I mean, there's no shame in losing to Georgia. They're a pretty damn good team and have been pretty good now for the last couple of years. But against anybody but Vandy, which doesn't really seem to give a crap what your background is, does it matter to you, or do you tend to just avoid games like this?
So I'll say this. There's not a chance in hell that I'm going to lay points with Texas in this game. I know both these guys. I understand what the power ratings say, but from a situational standpoint, all right, here's a Longhorns team, and I know their path to the playoff is still very live. But coming off a game in which you put everything into and got wiped out, you have a bye on deck, you have Vandy here. This isn't let's step up and bring our A game for Texas. And if they get it, Texas A game, if they could shut down Vanderbilt, I'll give them all the credit in the world. But it doesn't feel like that type of a spot. And certainly the long-term trends show that. 6-0 teams off their first loss of the season as a favorite in Game 7. The bubble burst teams, stat from Mark Lawrence, those teams 8-19 ATS away in conference contest the following week. And again, it's not like Texas has to win this game by 3 touchdowns. They get out of here with a 7-point win. They're just as happy. 14-point win. They're just happy. And Vandy, no, it's very clear. You don't want to lay points with Vandy. Saw that last week. But when a team covers again and again and again as a dog, you take that team as a dog. Vandy, this isn't something new. This isn't something different. They've been doing it all year. Plus 13 at Kentucky. Plus 23 versus Alabama. Plus 17.5 in Missouri. Plus 13 against Virginia Tech. None of those were sweats for the Commodores. They were in the games, all right, with a chance to win. Their biggest defeat this season by 4 points against Georgia Southern. You know what I mean? I think Vandy hangs around. I will take the points if I get involved in this one, and it's a play that may well be on my client card by the time everything comes out at the end of the day.
Is it fair to think, Teddy, is it correlated at all with if Vandy's in this game, we're probably going over? If Vandy's not, no, you like it the other way?
There's not a strong enough correlation for me to say A versus B, and this is why. I would not be surprised if Texas has a flat game offensively here. I would not be surprised if Texas come out and is flat as a pancake in this contest early on. And if Texas comes out and scores 3 touchdowns in the first 3 drives, so be it. Yeah, I'm going to be wrong. But my hunch here is that Texas, I worry about them letting down early on in this one. I don't like the spot. I don't like the travel spot. I don't like anything for the Longhorns this week, but it doesn't specifically correlate to over. Texas offense may not be clicking on all cylinders either.
Going to be an interesting one. We'll learn a little something about the moxie of this Texas team. Can they go in there, get the win, which ultimately is probably the only thing that matters now with a 12-team playoff, which is interesting here. Don't forget, guys, hit the thumbs up if you could. Don't forget to subscribe if you're joining us here on WagerTalk's College Football Kickoff Show. We got one more game we're going to break down, then we'll jump into the chat room here, grab a couple of games that you guys are interested in this Week 9 slates. Let us start, or let us end here with our roundtable in the SEC. Why not? As Texas A&M at home, taking on LSU. I give up on LSU. I can't figure this team out. They are, I can tell you this, they're going into the spot. These teams have split the last 6 times that they have played. The underdog has been a profitable bet in this series. LSU seems to have figured it out defensively. I'm pretty sure Teddy told you that last week here. We already know A&M at home is going to bring the defense. I could not have been, Bryan Leonard, more impressed with A&M at home against Mizzou, who was coming off a bye. And just an absolute thrashing by A&M. In the meantime, we saw the Ole Miss game with LSU. They followed that up with a nice win. So when it put it all together here, is this a defensive battle, offensive battle? Who are you favoring one way or the other here?
Good points. Before I get to this, I just want to touch on something Teddy said. It was the Mark Lawrence angle of basically you're heartbroken because you've lost. When there was 4 teams in the playoffs, that's something to pay attention to. But now with 12, I think you can throw that out the window. It's a different situation. You don't have to go perfect or have one loss to get a chance to play for the national title any longer. It was a great number, a great trend for a long time from our friend Mark. We'll have to see how this one works out now. But yeah, the LSU A&M game, the Tigers have won 6 straight games since that season opening loss in Vegas against USC. I think the campaign lightly comes down to the next 2 weeks here for this LSU team. Obviously, they take on the Aggies here, pretty good ball club, and then they host Alabama next week. So this has been a bit of a fortunate team, though, as they've only fumbled the ball once all season, while opponents have fumbled 14 times. And it's just been crazy how they've gotten that advantage. That's resulted in a +6 turnover advantage and just fumbles. So you can't expect that to continue, especially when you're playing teams just as physical as you are. The running game's been solid. The passing attack has produced a 147.57 quarterback rating. The defense has been burned occasionally through the air, but as you mentioned, they're starting to play a lot better defensively now. And I think I like the defense from LSU in this game. Like LSU, A&M hasn't lost anything since the opener year. A 23-13 home loss to Notre Dame. The Aggies run the ball very well. They average 5.37 yards per carry on the season. This so far in the season, that's very impressive. And like their opponent in Texas A&M, they've only fumbled once all year. So that running game has been really good for Texas A&M. Our line in this game, unfortunately, is A&M by a single point, which is what it is right now. So that's not going to get us involved with this contest on the side selection. But because of the importance of this contest and the way these defenses are playing now, I think this is going to be more a conservative game because it's such an important game for both of these teams. I would expect both teams to take care of the football, which they have done all season long. So we're going to play this game under the total. I think if I was to play this one at all, that would be the way I would take a look at this one.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Brian. The defenses have been extremely impressive. Trig, what do you think? I mean, the Aggies have been pretty good at home, and too. I think 11-2 straight up run at home here. LSU under Kelly has not been actually great against the number away from home outside of LSU. 4-11 against the number, Trig. Under Kelly here at LSU, plus it's their second straight road game. Do you trust LSU to go on the road and win this game outright?
I mean, I don't trust Texas A&M. Now, to your point, Joe, I believe the home team is now 1-7 straight in this series.
Yep.
Someone would have to check me on that. I thought I had that written down correctly. I'm not a huge believer in Connor Weigman. So I don't really want to bet Texas A&M. I was impressed with LSU last week. I thought their defense was really impressive. They took the run away from Arkansas, just 38 rush yards for the Razorbacks in that game. Forced 3 turnovers. Like, I kind of lean toward, I agree with Brian. Feels like a tight game that stays under. Not one, I would have liked LSU a day or two ago when this was like 2.5 or whenever it was like they were catching a couple points. Now at 1, I don't see much value there, but the defense has been really good for LSU. Their pressure rate has been very good. So I don't think I see Texas A&M doing a ton offensively here. So if the A&M defense can kind of do their part, I agree with Brian. It feels like this one probably is a tight game that stays under that 55 total.
It feels like a lot of points for a pick'em game. Teddy, are you leaning one way or the other? I mean, Elko's done a great job. I mean, both these teams lost the opening game of the season, then they've rattled off all these wins. So I love teams that seem to be getting better and better and better in each week, and the eye test tells me both these teams are figuring some things out. Tough spot for LSU, second game on the road and a tough place to play. Can they get it done, or would it be the home team for you?
So it's I'm going to mirror a lot of what these guys have said because I agree with it. From a side standpoint, this game feels like a coin flip to me, and the point spread says it's a coin flip game. And I could, it's one of those scenarios where someone's going to make play in the fourth quarter to win or lose. It's not a scenario. If I had to play a side, I can only play the sharp side here. There's lots of money for LSU for a reason, and I'm an LSU believer. So I would only look at the LSU side, but it's not a side I'm close to playing. Came on the show last week and made a case for LSU under the total. That was not even a sweat. It was an easy right side, and I'm going to make the same case here. LSU's defense is really freaking good. A&M's defense is really freaking good. Okay, the quarterback play, whether it's a Weigman or a Nussmeier, it doesn't blow me away. All right, for either side. And I know when you look at the series history, you got like she's played 7 overtime, 74-72. 42-30 last year, 38-23 the year before. It's been over. But when you look closer at those games, all of them. Well, not the 74-72 one necessarily. That was 7 overtimes. But last year, neither team got to 400 yards of offense. All right. We saw big plays. We saw cheap touchdowns. And that can happen when you have teams with elite athletes like both these two squads do. But the bottom line for me is, do I expect to see more than 7 or 8 or more than, are we going to see 8 touchdowns in this game? I say no. I do not see these two offenses marching up and down the field all day against these two Ds. And even if they get in the red zone, I'm not convinced they're going to be scoring touchdowns. So I will make it a trifecta. Brian, Adam, and I all agree the under is the way to look in this one.
All right, liking the under in this one here. That's a clean sweep. So let me just get that over bet in. All right, there we go. 4 guys all agree on the under. What the hell could possibly go wrong with that play there? But should be a good one in the SEC. Don't forget to hit that like button, thumbs up, subscribe. We would certainly appreciate that. And more importantly, if you have a question about a great Week 9 slate here, guys, drop them in the chat. We're going to run through a couple of these games that you guys have been asking about in the chat room. And again, if you're watching it on the replay, drop them in the comment section because we will be monitoring that and answering questions right up until kickoff. So if you got a game you want to talk about, let's go. And of course, I think FB Coach 13 is finally done listing the games he has interest in. So we'll start with one of the newest games here. And how about Bryan Leonard, your UNLV team taking on Boise State here tonight? I've seen a couple of questions in this one. Is it crazy to me, or is this kind of like, this is a pretty big game because the winner of this game probably has a really good shot at being that Power 5 school, right, that ends up making the playoff or at least is on track to there. This would be a huge win for both of these teams. The question is there a lot separating these teams? Is there any way we're looking at an under in this game tonight? What do you think of your UNLV running Rebels getting points at home?
Well, this one all comes down to last time they played, Boise blew them out. And I think a lot of people think that is going to be the case here. Line opened to 3, which I thought was fair. It's up to 3.5. I like the Boise side, but at 3.5, it's probably going to keep me away. They've proven it year in and year out. I like this UNLV team, but I gotta mention it while Trig's on the show. His Syracuse team really impressed me when they played UNLV earlier.
Yep. No longer my team after last night.
Yes. Now after yesterday, I have to question how good UNLV is at this point. So I don't want to back UNLV here. We'll see what happens. I may end up going to this game. I think it's going to be the biggest college football game for UNLV in a long time, other than a bowl. So big game for this city and for UNLV. But I just don't think they have the talent enough to beat Boise. Boise's a team you get consistent efforts from each and every time they play. UNLV, as much as I like them, the quarterback has been very inconsistent since he's taken over the role. When he's been good, he's been very good. But he's not very accurate in my regard. So I like the Boise side, but we've lost a good number of 3, so I'll be passing.
So, Teddy, let me ask you a question about this game and UNLV and because I've heard it brought up a couple of times over the last few weeks when looking at teams like a UNLV who are quite honestly maybe the best damn special teams college football team I have ever seen this group is unbelievable. They always make a huge special teams play when they need it the most, much like we've seen with Harbaugh and the Ravens in years past. How much do you factor that in when you look at a game like this where two teams, for the most part, might be pretty even?
That's a great question, Joe. That really is. And if you talk about a sneaky way to be able to make money in college football, special teams are absolutely a piece of the equation. When a team has elite special teams, it hurts all of their numbers. Their opponent gets pinned deep as opposed to getting the ball further out. So what happens? They're going to gain more yards when they score. So what's going to happen? Your team's going to give up more yardage. When you're getting good kick returns and punt returns and good field position off of a block punt or a block kick, guess what? Fewer yards you're going to gain because you're on shorter fields. So all of a sudden, when you have elite special teams, it makes your offensive numbers look worse. It makes your defensive numbers look worse. It is, without a doubt, one of the key ways I like to make money in college football. You find teams with elite special teams, their season-long stats are going to lie. And UNLV is certainly among those teams. I'm not fading the Rebels tonight. Not a chance. Syracuse was extremely lucky and fortuitous to beat UNLV when they beat them. And I don't, the fact that Syracuse threw a bunch of pick sixes last night does not change my opinion about the Rebels. This is the best UNLV team that I've seen by far in my 27 years in Las Vegas. I won't be fading them tonight in the biggest game they have all year. Odom's been pointing to this game for a month and a half.
Yeah.
All right. UNLV is going to be ready. Wouldn't step in front of them.
Yeah, no, guaranteed they're going to get a punt block, a field goal block. Guaranteed they're going to get something when they need it the most here. This is how unbelievably good this team has been. So great stuff there, Teddy. Should be a good one here tonight we're looking at. We're also hearing a lot. And Trig, let me ask you, has Gus Malzahn with the quarterback change figured things out for UCF? Because there seems to be an awful lot of people jumping on the UCF bandwagon and off the BYU bandwagon. You haven't been convinced the last couple of weeks on the show about BYU to begin with. It's not a great spot for them, but are you buying them here, or what do you think with UCF flipping as a favorite now?
Yeah, so I'll talk about this game in a second. I just want to say quick, I did bet Louisville. So as you see me fidgeting with my phone over
Yes.
here, I'm on the site putting it out to clients. So I just wanted to say that quick. I took Louisville I laid the touchdown. So -7. You can get that. It's -117 at Bet Online. It's -124 at DraftKings. There's basically every book has a -7 option at this point, anywhere between -115 to -130. So that is a bet I made. I figured this was a good chance to slot that in because I don't have a enormous opinion. And if you want my breakdown for that Louisville game, I already did that on the show. I'm not going to get back into the play as much as I did lock it in. 4% play. I want to give it out here on the show to the viewers. Going over to UCF BYU, I thought about UCF a little bit. I missed the move there. So I think that was +1.5, +2 at one point earlier this week. I'm just looking to see where we're at on it now. I'm sure UCF is still the favorite as I scroll through. Joe, do you have a current? Yeah, see, that's the problem. I'm not going to lay 2.5. I suppose you could make a case. Well, you could play the money line, but even there, you're probably in the -130, -135 range. Yep. I don't really mind selling BYU a little bit at this point. But again, I think the opportunity to do that was probably last week against the number. Taking the 10 or 9.5 or 10 with Oklahoma State. I know they kind of pulled it out at the end, but I was, in hindsight, was much more comfortable with that being a close game than I am UCF winning this game, needing them to win this game. There was a game earlier this year. I got very fortunate at a 5% play on UCF against TCU. They kind of pulled that game out right at the end. But, that TCU offense that I don't think is very good kind of moved the ball up and down the field against UCF. So I guess I have enough concerns with Central Florida where there was a reason I didn't bet it. Now I'm not going to come back and take a worse number, but I don't fully disagree with the market. So very slight lean toward UCF there for me.
All right, leaning towards UCF. Gus going with Ja'Cory Brown, I believe, over KJ Jefferson, except Ja'Cory can't throw the ball out of a paper bag, but he can certainly run it, and that's what Gus loves to do here. We'll see if BYU's defense is up to the task in that game coming up tomorrow night. And another question we're getting on a number of spots here, Bryan Leonard, has to do with Cignetti in Indiana, who just refuses to lose. Problem is, they got a MAC quarterback that ain't there anymore, Curtis Rourke, who ended up busting his thumb, I believe it was, in that game against Nebraska. So they do have a quarterback in Taven Jackson that has starting experience, and you wouldn't know he was bad. They came in, I think he was 7 of 8 for nearly 100 yards against them. They literally didn't skip a beat against Nebraska. The question is, do we trust a backup quarterback against Washington coming off a bye who's got a pretty good quarterback themselves? Tough spot here and a big number, but how are you looking at it?
I'm not going to stand in the way of Indiana. I downplayed them last week. I said I couldn't wait to bet against them, and I ended up playing Nebraska, and it was my only loss on the day. So they put me in my place last week, and maybe they're a lot better than what I thought they were. But Indiana's been so pedestrian over the years in college football that, yeah, we've seen these years where they've run a few games. They'll beat Ohio State or something, or just. But this year, they're a legitimate team. But yes, as you mentioned, without the quarterback, it's hard to play here. Washington is a team that is very good, and the defense has only allowed 17 points a game for Washington. So you've got a team with a very good defense playing a team with a backup quarterback. That may be something there with Washington. But, man, maybe it's just the entire system here for Indiana is much better than it was, their offensive system than it was in the past. So I'm going to be sitting this one out. I'm going to try to learn a little bit more from Indiana because obviously my information that I had going into last week was wrong. They've really impressed me, and Nebraska's fallen off a cliff lately. So I'll pass on this one. I just don't have anything enough to play on it.
But you're not avoiding Indiana because it's a backup quarterback in this spot here. It's not something that would absolutely only make you look towards Washington because the backup quarterback not in this spot, right?
Yeah, we just don't know what the drop off is, and the other guys have so much success. But this is a confident team coming into this game. I'm sure Indiana thinks they're going to win and win big.
Yeah, it's Cincinnati. It's amazing what a quality coach team. They don't beat themselves. Look at that. Teddy, last one of you, but let's be realistic. You knew this was coming. Michigan versus Michigan State. It's all over the chat room. So, can Michigan, how about we concentrate on a prop in this game? Will Michigan throw for over 100 yards? Yes or no? Because if they can't, I don't. Is this the year maybe Michigan State can get it done against them? I just don't know what to make of this Michigan team.
I know exactly what to make of this Michigan team. They're not that good. We knew that coming into the season. That offensively there was going to be some struggle. Now defensively, the Wolverines are still a pretty darn good team, but they are not going to move the football up and down the field against good defenses. They're not going to move the football up and down the field against mediocre defenses, and that makes me very concerned about laying any price with the Wolverines as a favorite. On the other side of the equation, you talked early in the show, you like teams that are getting better. Well, you know who's getting better? As we thought they would. Michigan State getting better as the season progresses. They played their best game of the year last week against Iowa. Certainly we're seeing Childs. And Childs has the arm, man. He's got a downfield arm. The playmakers. When you're making plays against Iowa, you can make plays against Michigan. And we certainly know the track record when we talk about this head coach as an underdog, second to none, I believe, since his tenure at Oregon State. So put it all together. For me, I ain't laying if I'm playing. It's dog or pass for this better. This, no hesitation, betting against my Wolverines.
Jonathan Smith, he was an automatic bet as a dog at Oregon State. Feel like he's in that same ballpark here now with Michigan State. All right, Trig, quickly here. You are the ACC man. You dropped in a play on Louisville here tonight. If you're just joining us, don't forget to give us a thumbs up there. We'd certainly appreciate it. Become part of that WagerTalk TV family by hitting the subscribe button. I had to ask you here. You liked Miami last week, laying a big number against Louisville. You liked Florida State against Duke. They didn't win against Duke. I thought they played well enough to beat Duke, but they didn't beat Duke. But now they're getting how many points here against the U? I mean, do you have faith in either one of these teams to cover this number?
I was just looking for the current. I got to organize my screen better. Looking for the current total on this game because I have a feeling this might go a little. I have a feeling this might go a little bit like Clemson.
54.5.
FSU. Yeah, I think it probably stays under that number. Now, am I overly confident in that enough where I'd really want to bet it? No, not really, but I also don't bet a ton of totals. But here's the thing, Florida State didn't play that poorly defensively, and they haven't played that poorly defensively. So, they're probably going to be able to hang in the game in that respect. Miami has been in a couple track meets lately. The Louisville game, the Cal game were their most two recent. If you remember, Joe, those games, Miami had a lot of points to make up in a short period of time against Cal. And then, of course, the Louisville game was just a track meet. Back and forth. That was a fantastic game. But that also, a game like that on the road, in that sort of big prime, not a primetime spot, but it was a big spot. It was the kind of the feature noon game or one of the feature noon games last week. That can take a lot out of a team. So now that they have to turn around, they come home. I don't know if I want to say they'll exhale, but because it's still sort of a rivalry game. But you have to think that they have this game in hand at some point. And if that's the case, I don't know that I see Miami just flying up and down the field, putting up 50, right? I just don't know if I can see that. Now, what I do know is that Florida State's offense is the reason I lost in that Florida State Duke game last week. The offense was just so bad. It didn't matter who was in at quarterback. The, Croman Hawk, Croman Hawk, whoever came, who came in eventually was bad. Glenn was bad. One of their touchdowns was a kick return out of the half. Even if Miami, even if Miami were to put up 45 points here, is it even a given that it goes over at that? This could be a 45-7 type game.
Yep.
So I think the only way to bet this is the under. It correlates a little bit with Florida State plus 21, but my concern would be that game where Miami just wins like 42-10, right?
Yep.
45-7, something like that. So rather than mess with that, I think the best way to play this game is the under, because it feels to me like Clemson, Florida State, where there's this huge number. Maybe Florida State gives an effort. maybe they hang around, but it's probably going to be hang around in a game where Miami's not as interested and they don't score as many points. So we'll call it under 54.5.
Don't hate that. Look, at in Miami, 7 o'clock Eastern time kickoff there. Most people will probably be looking forward to watching the Yankee game anyway here in South Florida. Speaking of which, Bryan Leonard, the World Series starts here tonight, and if there's anybody on this panel that's going to have a bet locked and loaded for the World Series, it's going to be you. As a matter of fact, all three of you guys. Wouldn't shock me at all if you all had World Series bets locked, loaded. You got that, Brian. You got the NHL, Week 9 college, Week 8 NFL. What's the card looking like for us at your page of WagerTalk?
Yeah, actually, I do have a play on Game 1 in the World Series tonight. I'm very selective. I don't put out game plays on every game, but I do have an advantage in this first game here, and I think it's a good bet. We also have 3 plays up in college football for tomorrow, including a big 5% play. I don't release many 5% in college football. I've had this up there all week. Love this play. We get to take advantage of a team that I just don't think is very good. So we are still working on the NBA card for today, but that's what we've got going on. 3 plays in college football tomorrow, the World Series bet today, and we'll start putting up our NFL later on today. So big weekend. We did very well in football last week, 7-1 Saturday and Sunday. Hopefully we can repeat that.
Get her done. WT.buzz/BL. Visit Bryan Leonard here. And Teddy, I mean, nobody during the playoffs in Major League Baseball, man, you were just cashing tickets left and right here. You had your finger on the pulse. Now we got the World Series. How about you? Locked, loaded, ready to roll here?
So I'm passing Game 1 and I'm passing for the series. That being said, I expect to be in action for Game 2, and I would not be surprised if I have a series play after Game 1. There's something I'm waiting for that I don't know what we're going to see tonight. Do lean under. If you find a 9 tonight, I would play the under. It was all 8.5 this morning, and I passed it, but there are 9s that have popped. I don't know these two teams get to 10 in Game 1 action on a Friday night, despite the Dodgers' strong bet for overs in their just concluded series against the New York Metropolitans. For the weekend, I'm riding a 69% NFL run over the last 4 weeks. We're making money right now in the NFL. I've got a 3-pack up and available for Sunday. I got NBA up for tonight, and the college football card will be posted as soon as this show is through. So check back. College football will be posted within the next hour. I should have everything up, and then I'll spend the afternoon working on write-ups.
Still available, guys. Get over to any one of their pages here. Under $8 a day. Great special happening. You can take advantage of. Make sure you visit these guys at WagerTalk.com. And Trig, you already gave everyone Louisville here on the show as you were passing that out. So how about there ain't no more KBO here, my man. So you got to have something rolling with the World Series. Come on.
That is false. We are also in the Korean series. And I will listen. I wasn't going to come on here and try to sell something after Syracuse last night, so that's why I gave the Louisville play out. But baseball has been really good, and we're still rolling in both. Actually, it's a great night to be a baseball fan because you got the World Series, and then the Korean series game is early for Korea, which means it's going to go on at like 1 a.m. Eastern. That I will have a play in, and I'm going to put that up as soon as I'm off the show. I just haven't entered it yet, but that I will have a play in. I do not have a play in Game 1 of the World Series. Like Teddy, once you get to the World Series, there might be like one good spot in the entire series to actually play. So I'm just going to be a spectator tonight. I kind of lean toward the Yankees just from a price standpoint, but it's not something I'm going to bet. I'll just be looking at, just watching that game. I did give you Louisville. That's a 4% play for me. And then all the college football. I just am going to put all of my college football for Saturday is in one package. So I'm adding everything to that package. I think there's 2 plays added already. I probably maybe add one more, but you'll probably get like 3 plays all on that package for college football. I want to close it with a question to the guys from something that came up earlier, because Teddy brought that great Mark Lawrence angle up that's been a thing for a long time. I agree with Brian that it's not going to apply to teams like Texas. Where I do think it's going to apply is to the group of 5 this year, more than ever, because the group of 5 teams are the ones that are going to get their bubble burst to the point where you're not going to want to, like me, you're not going to want to get out of bed today. I had Syracuse 5% play last night. This would be the day to call in sick to work. I'm obviously here because I love you guys, but like the group of 5 teams, like the UNLVs or the Boise's or the Navies or the Armies that think they're going to that 12-team playoff and then aren't, I think that's where you're going to be able to make your money with that Mark Lawrence angle. What do you guys think?
What do you think, Teddy?
I agree.
So 2 factors. First, for as big as UNLV as Boise is, if things break right for both these teams, they'll meet again for the Mountain West title, and that will be the game that determines who goes. So I don't know that we're going to see bubble bursts out of the 1-loss teams from the non-Power 5 or from the group of 5 conferences, because there's an opportunity for them to get in still. One non-Power 5 team or Power 4 teams getting in. And that probably won't be determined until the first week of December.
Right.
So, but conceptually, you're 6-0. All right. You have the best. You're having the best year you've had in some time. You've got the biggest game that you have of the season. Georgia comes to town and kicks your ass. In my mind, that's not a bet on spot the next week. That is a bubble burst spot. Even though Texas still has a live path, psychologically, you're still affected by that loss. In my opinion, we'll find out on Saturday.
Yep. Also comes to the fact where, Teddy, and we've said it how many times, right? The biggest thing you got to avoid is losing that Georgia game twice. And that's the risk is what you have with Texas this week. No matter how good they are, they got a shot at losing that game twice here, and that's what they're going to try to avoid there. So, guys, plenty of opportunities, though, to make it a very profitable weekend. Visit these guys over at WagerTalk.com. Don't forget, a thumbs up and the subscribe button. Become part of the WagerTalk TV family. We certainly appreciate it. Drop your questions on the games in the comment section. We will get back to you right up until kickoff. But, hey, best of luck with all the plays. And if it's big game previews you want, well, it's big game previews we got. The video on your screen is one of them right now. Go ahead, check that one out, and make sure you come back and join us again next week for Week 10 of the College Football Kickoff Show. Best of luck. We'll see you again next week.